Greetings, campers and stoic gamers. Today I chat to Mark Crombleholme. Mark is Eldar player, or Eldari as you'd have them today. But over the last 12 months or so, he's been fiddling with Necrons, and I think he kind of likes it, although I'm not certain the Necrons feel the same way. He has been to the Leeds GT with a list that he was reasonably happy about, but having had no experience playing 2,000 points at 10th edition before, he was pretty unsure, and he's going to tell us all about how he got on. Now, it's a bit of a bear pit. The Team England captain, Josh Roberts, won the event with his Eldari, dropping only 2 points across the entire weekend. The top tables were virtually all Eldari and Death Watch. So I feel we may have a little story of woe coming our way. But I'm sure that Mark will have enjoyed it, learnt a lot, and hopefully will share some of his learnings with me so that I can change my Necron list based on his learnings, and I can live vicariously, changing it in time for the Goonhammer Open that I'm attending on the 2nd and 3rd of September. So, listen in, everyone. See what Mark has to say. If you're interested in Necrons, this is the edition for you. So, Mark, tell us a little bit about your Necron list that you took to the Leeds GT over the weekend. How did it feel? What was in it? Did it go to plan? Let us know a little bit about your list first.
Okay, yeah. So I hadn't had many games going into this. So like 2 games ever of 10th edition going into this tournament. So I was going off what I'd read, what I thought. So the first thing that went into my list was a lovely 10-man Lich Guard blob with swords and shields.
Yeah.
A couple of Cryptothralls, an Overlord with a Resorb, and a Technomancer. Just lovely big pile that, in theory, will hold the centre of the board or any objective you choose for a long, long time. Yeah. They were great. I then took 2 big units, so 6-man units of Tomb Blades, with all the upgrades I could squeeze onto them, and Particle Casters for the devastating wounds. That was mostly based on 9th edition. I loved my Tomb Blades. I had them ready. As it happens, we'll come to it later, but they worked very well as well, so that was good. 2 Annihilation Barges, which I took because they were cheap, and I like their special rule for mortal wounds coming out in an aura. Took the Transcendent Catan with the Sempiternal Weave because, just look at him. He's a very scary, tanky boy. I took 2 10-man units of Death Marks because I wanted to paint them. They were at the bottom of my almost complete Necron collection now for painting. So I had to get them painted, but I took them. I really like their gun profile.
Yeah.
It's Dread 5.
Do you think that taking into a cutthroat competition on the basis that you wanted to paint them was a wise decision?
I mean, it worked in 9th for me. I changed my list by 1 or 2 units for every event in 9th, and I did as well as I've done with any other list recently. And it's helped me paint about 30,000 points of Necrons over the last year and a half. So I'm happy with it. Yeah. But yeah, they're just cool looking models, and I like the. There was nothing bad about them. The cost is right. Anything with free deep strike is good to me, and their ability to shoot something that turns up,
and they're cheap.
Scary, cheap. 65 points for 5. Yeah, the Transcendent Catan, and other bits. Just sort of pootling around the list, really.
I think we should...
big unit of destroyers.
Yeah, how many? 6?
6 with a Lord with an orb in there, and then there were a couple of individual heavy destroyers. Yeah,
that's so similar to my list. It's really surprising that we've arrived at the same place by a different route. For those people who are listening who don't know what the Catan is like, he's something like toughness 11 or something like that. Or he's got 11 wounds and his toughness 9, something like that. But he's got a 4-up invulnerable, and you halve all damage, and he gets the Sempiternal Weave as an enhancement, so he gets a 4-up feel no pain as well. And just to top the lot, he reanimates now, although he didn't when they first came out because of an omission in the rules, but now he reanimates as well. And if you really want to squeeze some more life out of him, you can use his special movement profile, which is advance anywhere on the table, drop him next to your Technomancer and get D3 wounds back at the end of your movement phase. So he is a monster, isn't he?
He's a very, very scary boy. He's he performed well in almost every game, which I guess we'll cover later. But yeah, he did real good.
Great. Okay, so thanks, Mark. So I know what's in your list. I understand most of how that works, and I'm hoping that you can pick out some examples of how the Cryptothals worked, how the Lich Guard worked, how the Tomb Blades did a bit later on as we go through the games later.
Yeah.
Okay, so what were your plans? How were you going to plan to score with this army?
So I knew I was going to push the centre with the Lich Guard.
Yeah.
Nine times out of 10. I did have a Hexmark Destroyer in there, which we forgot to mention. He was always just going to hang around the back-ish and boost anything with the Sovereign Coronal for the +1 to hit. I knew my in my head, my death marks were going to Deep Strike a lot. But that was actually probably a mistake. And I was sort of remembering 9th edition rules and trying to bring it into 10th. So I started off deep striking them. By the end of the event, they were always deploying.
Yeah.
Annihilation Barges, I just really enjoyed. So they were always going to sort of support the middle, find a nice little firing lane, and annoy people.
Yeah.
Locust Destroyers had the Veil of Darkness. So the plan for them was the plan that has always been the plan for them, was teleport somewhere and rip something's face off. And the Heavy Destroyers, I didn't have a plan exactly, but the general plan is shoot someone's tank and or monster.
Okay.
And Catan was going to be run at things.
No, I've got a very similar list, and it's and I'm pleased that we're in the same kind of place. Okay, so you arrive at Leeds. You get lost in the one-way system, but eventually you arrive on time. You meet all your mates, and you have your first game, and it's against
Magoo Ryan McKenna with a lovely Eldari Wraith Knight D-Cannon Metalist.
What a lovely way to spend a Saturday morning.
Yep. And also a perfect third game of 10th edition.
So tell me about it. How did it go?
It went well for me. I scored 100 points and he scored mid-50s, I think.
Oh, wow. You're going to have to share how that happened, because they are top of the heap at the moment, and you managed to really make an impact there. So what happened?
Well, the short version is I don't think Ryan can roll dice.
The dice gods were on your side.
I feel like he was rolling D3s the whole game.
Right.
You know, the damage that did come through was minimal. The first time he rolled his fate dice, he got 0, 6s or 5s. He had to re-roll it. But we had a good fun. His Wraith Knight was very scary, but I didn't try and kill it. I shot it a couple of times when I had nothing else to shoot, but I just had to ignore it as best I could and deal with the cards. I played random cards in every game, tactical cards.
Yeah.
And just sort of play the missions I was dealt with. The Lich Guard survived everything he could throw at them, basically for the game.
All right, so they walked onto the objective in the centre of the table.
Yeah, and they stayed there.
Right, just for the listener, can you explain how the addition of the Cryptothals work and the Res Orb, just so that people understand exactly how tough these guys are?
Yeah, so that I mean that they're toughness 5, 2 wound, 4 up invulnerable save unit on their own with -1 to wound. Then you put 2 Cryptothralls into the unit. They become part of the unit. They don't gain the 4 up invulnerable save, but they do have an inherent 4 up feel no pain and 2 wounds each, which is nice. And a Technomancer added to the unit gives the whole unit a 5 up feel no pain. So depending on what is coming in, shooting wise, you can either choose to take an invulnerable save and a 5 up feel no pain, or you can go straight to your Cryptothrall's armor save and 4 up feel no pains. And then due to shenanigans, you just keep bringing the models you want back into the unit via reanimation.
Yeah.
So it just takes an awful lot to even really dent that unit.
Yeah.
Its damage output isn't great. Eventually in our game, I moved them on from the middle objective to charge his backfield objective, which was sort of opposite Dawn of War deployment in the centre, and I killed his stuff that was there and stole that from him when I drew the right mission card to do that.
Yeah.
But realistically, all of his good stuff, like the warp spiders and stuff, the death marks were really, really useful to deter them from deep striking where he wanted them to be. And my Tomb Blades cleaned up small toughness 3 units very, very well.
I bet. So the death marks, they have an ability, don't they, to shoot at units that arrive by deep strike within 18 inches?
Yeah, arrive from reserves within.
Right.
18 inches.
Is it definitely reserves, or can you shoot things like warp spiders that suddenly arrive in front of you?
So I think it's going to depend how the warp spiders are arriving. We didn't play it that I could shoot them when they did their flicker jump.
Ah, okay.
But I genuinely believe you probably can. Like I said, third game, I didn't want to be looking rules up on the start of a Saturday morning. So we played it as if you couldn't, and but like when his hawks deep struck in, they got shot.
Yeah.
And things like that, you know.
And did you use the precision ability, or did you just shoot the unit?
So there was no characters in the unit, so
okay.
I just shot them. Precision did get used in later on in other games, but in this it wasn't really worth it. He had 1 Farseer in a unit of 3 bikes, but I left that alive. That was alive at the end of the game.
That sounds very generous of you, Mark. Thank you for leaving it alive. I bet he was happy.
Well, I'm an Eldar player at heart, Michael. So
I know.
I've got to leave the guys alive. There's not many of them left.
You'll just have to get into the spirit stones and all that kind of malarkey. After a resounding victory against the Eldari, helped by the dice gods, obviously, you got your next army. There's the one in the afternoon on Saturday. What was that, Mark?
So I played against Team Ignite's Chris Radford with his Death Watch.
Team Ignite is Vic VJ, Dave Gaylard, and all of those bunch, isn't it?
Yeah, real good players.
You're telling me.
And Chris is no exception.
Okay. Well, tell me about it.
Well, the short version is I learned how to become a ventriloquist dummy.
Okay, I think I can picture the scene, but you better explain exactly what army you were fighting and how you got on.
So he was running Deathwatch, which
hate them.
On its own right, they're tailored to kill Necrons. Right, they get a lot of good things about killing aliens.
Yeah, they do.
And he had taken, I don't know the exact words, but a lot of frag cannons.
Yeah.
So I think he had 3 or 4 normal scary Deathwatch units with frag cannons and 1 very scary Deathwatch unit with frag cannons. And then he had a big 10-man Desolator brick hiding behind a wall.
Yeah.
And like, you know, stuff. There was bits of other things. It was all a bit of a blur.
Yeah.
I did the plan, which was to run the Lich Guard up the middle, stand there and, you know, survive all of his shooting. And I didn't. I didn't do that.
No,
No.
I know what you mean. I fight Alex Weston, his his Death Watch virtually every week, and I have discovered that no matter how tough Necrons are, and people say, "Oh, they're invincible, you can't kill them," you can with enough frag cannons and desolators.
Yeah, the Desolators not so bad, right? Not in the early stages of the game. They shot destroyers, and a full unit of Desolators fired their no line of sight shooting into one Locust destroyer and didn't wound it. Didn't wound it.
Yeah, yeah,
But they completely cleared my full Lich Guard blob with stratagem use, everything.
yeah,
They cleared it in a single turn of shooting.
yeah. Oath of Moment, all of that kind of stuff.
All of that stuff.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it was eye opening. I barely knew what 10th edition did, let alone what Death Watch did in 10th edition. But it was good to get a game in against Chris because he's obviously a very good player. So he showed me like what they definitely can do, and he's obviously friendly enough. He was talking me through while we were sort of laughing about how all my stuff was dead. And the last thing to die in the whole game was my Transcendent Catan. Which ended up in it being shot at and fighting about 3 of his 10-man squads at the top of the board, just for glory. And he eventually died, and it was something like 100-37 to Chris. So it was a full kicking.
Do you know what? Alex always says his list is rubbish when I fight him, but I don't think I've ever beaten his Death Watch list. And it's nasty. Did he have the teleporting units that suddenly appeared just where you don't want them to and shot at everything and killed them with the frag cannons? And the strat that made their range longer, so they were in short range, rapid fire range when they were deep striking and all that kind of malarkey?
That's right. Yeah, I'm having flashbacks now. Yeah, all of the good stuff, and because I was a very special kind of idiot, I had, as discussed earlier, I deep struck all my death marks, so they weren't even there to shoot him when he teleported.
Yeah,
so lessons learned.
Yeah, too right. Let's skip on, shall we? Let's skip on to the third game. This would be the evening one. So by now you're tired, you're a bit emotional. What list did you draw in the third round?
I played against a young lady called Ash with Chaos Demons, and it was full of monsters.
Oh, it was the big Monster Mash one. Okay, I haven't played one of those. I'm not quite sure how they're going to fare in 10th. Well, how did you get on?
So she was relatively new to tournaments. She'd been playing Warhammer about a year and a half, I think she said. And this was her first tournament. She had Bellicor, and she had Scarbrand, and a Bloodthirster, and some Bloodletters, and Pink Horrors, and some of the fat Nurgle snail people, and the character snail.
Yes, but not a competitive list then.
I couldn't tell you. Demons are weird. But essentially, she brought a combat list and I had a shooting list.
Yeah.
I went first, and she had very much deployed to go first as well. So my Tomb Blades did a lot of work into the small things and killed them pretty much all that was on the board on turn 1.
Yeah.
And then as she sort of tried to fight out of her deployment zone with the snails and Bellicor, there was a gap at the back, so I teleported the Transcendent Catan to the back, who eventually killed the Changeling, and took her home objective, and then so she was sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place. Bellicor died to some great Locust heavy destroyer shooting. It was glorious. And then we had a bit of fun towards the end. The game had gone away from us, so we were having a bit of fun because she deep struck Scarbrand and the Bloodthirster 6 inches away from the Transcendent Catan. They both failed their charges. We re-rolled Scarbrand. Scarbrand made it in, and he swung at this Transcendent Catan with 9 Scarbrand level flat
he's nasty.
damage. Flat 6 damage attacks. And due to a combination of her dice, my saves, the grand total at the end was 1 damage to the Catan.
That's the way it should be all the time with Transcendent Catan. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I wish. I wish it was. But yeah, that was fun. In return, if it makes Demon players feel any better, my Catan did next to nothing to Scarbrand either. But yeah, it was a nice way to end the Saturday after game 2.
Well, I know what you mean. I fought at the doubles competition. I fought my mates who had a demon monster mash army, and the one thing that really was better than Be'lakor, better than anything else, were the chickens, the Slanesh chickens, the ones that shoot. They don't fight very well, but they shoot a lot. And I can't remember what they're called now. I just used to call them big chickens because they looked like a big chicken. But they shot really well, and if I was taking a demon list, I'd be taking 3 of those little buggers.
Right, okay.
But anyway, so you finish, you go back, you don't drink, you go back, you have an ice bath, you get your physio there, you're all being oiled up, full body lick, and you have a good night's sleep. Is that what happens?
I drove an hour and a half home, changed my bed because the cat had been sick on it while I'd been away. Started watching a YouTube show, fell asleep, and luckily woke up in time to leave in the morning again.
Fantastic. So you turn up on Sunday morning, not smelling of cat piss and feeling as bright as a button. I'm assuming you got there through the one-way system all right this time, Mark.
We made it in. Yeah, we made it in okay. It was absolutely fine.
And your greet, so at the moment, after the first day, you're 2-1. You won 2, you lost 1.
Yep.
Okay, and you won against Eldari, which is fabulous. Lost against Deathwatch, which I understand. And the Chaos one, I think, could go either way against an experienced player, but you won that one, so that's great. Who are you fighting first thing on a Sunday morning?
First thing on a Sunday morning, I was fighting the guy that was stood next to me outside, and we were just chatting in the coffee shop and realised we were playing each other. James Webster from Dead Red Gaming, and he had Eldari again.
Oh no! Okay, was this list the same as, or at least similar to the first one?
No, I think if you put his list up against the first list I played, the internet would say that his list was worse.
Oh, okay.
He had no Wraith Knight. And it was a few like Harlequin bits and pieces chucked in there. So there were still D-Cannons, still Farseers, Void Weavers.
Yeah.
3 of those. They were quite nasty. And he had the Incarn, which was a big...
Oh, hang on. Let me just... People need to know how the Incarn works, because I fought it at the doubles, and it was an absolute bugger. It teleports to where something has died. That's how it works, yeah?
Yeah, that's it.
Right, so what happened in my game, and tell me if this is something that you experienced, Mark. He moved a wave serpent all the way across the table as far as he could, right into my face, which I then politely shot. It died. The Incarn then appeared next to it and charged into my unit of whatever they were that were holding my home objective, which I thought was rude, to be honest.
Yeah.
I thought it was rude. So my turn comes round. I line up my Transcendent Catan and the destroyers to shoot it and then charge it, finish it off. I stupidly shoot something on the other side of the table, kill it. Guess what happens to the Incarn?
Oh, it went back, didn't it?
It did.
Yeah.
It's an absolute bugger like that. You've got to be really careful, because I waste a turn basically with most of my good stuff that's doing nothing now. And yep. I'm assuming, did you like the Incarn? Was it something that you'd put in your Eldar list?
It's something that is firmly in my Eldar list, but also I know how it plays, and it's played roughly the same for a long, long time.
Yeah.
So the same sort of techniques for minimising the disruption it causes, they still apply.
Can you shoot it with your death marks when it appears?
I don't know. It didn't come up, but maybe it's the same as the warp spiders.
Yeah.
It's going to depend if you count as being deployed via reserves.
Yeah.
When you are removed from the board and set back up. I think the wording possibly would suggest that you can, but I haven't looked into it. I will do though.
When you do, would you let me know?
Yeah.
Okay, so how did that game go?
Pretty good. I would say from a competitive point of view, this was the best game of the weekend for me. He was also a really, really nice guy. Few complaints, and he's a friend now. I've joined his club, but he did, and don't be sick here, Michael. He had dice where the symbols were on wands.
I've got some of those.
No, it's the worst.
No, I've got skull and crossbones on wands, and I do confuse a lot of people.
No, it's the only two things that are worse about people and dice in 40k are clear dice with black dots.
Oh, nightmare! Can't see them.
And then people that have an inability to tidy their own dice up after they've rolled them, so that the board looks like a claymore of dice has gone off.
Oh, mate, do you know what? That is so... I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I hear that, and I'm forever picking up their dice and just knocking them back across the table towards them, as if...
Yep.
And I'm trying to make them, by a sheer effort of will, I'm trying to say to them, pick up your effing dice and don't leave them lying about. But they don't seem to get it. I don't know what's going on there.
It frustrates me to a way where I'm pretty sure it's my problem, not theirs. But
It's not. Honestly, Mark, you're not the only person. Yeah. All right, so go on. What happened? So he's a nice guy. You're now sleeping together. Other than that, what happened in the game?
So I genuinely don't remember who went first. I think it was me. I didn't have very much to shoot at because he'd hidden his army very well. I got one sneaky Locust Destroyer off on his Incarn, and it went through and half damage to 3 damage. Mm-hmm. And my Catan decided to run out into the open and be a little bit of bait, because I needed an extra turn to get everything where I needed it to be in this without being shot, you know?
Yeah.
He then dutifully turned around and shot the Catan, declaring, "I know this is a trap, but I want to see if I can do it."
I like his style.
and then he did, and it was something like the last roll of his shooting phase that he got it through and he killed the Catan. It was almost his whole army's shooting.
Yeah.
And he did kill it, and I was very upset.
Yeah, I would be too. Yeah, but.
And I thought at that point in my head, I was like, well, this game is gone now. It was a bit of a mistake, but you live and learn. And I need to know what it can survive, you know?
Yeah.
Things happened, and it came round to my turn. I Veil of Darkness to my destroyers, and you know, I'm fighting MSU Eldar, so stuff's dying all over the place. He then made what would later be described as a mistake. But he also declared it as a mistake before he did it. So he said, "This is probably a mistake, but I'm going to teleport to where I just killed something." And he knew I hadn't shot my Locust Destroyers yet. But he was fairly confident they would not kill the Incarn with shooting. So he did the thing, and then I did the thing. And I did not kill the Incarn with shooting, but I did leave it with only 1 wound left. Due to I rolled something like 8 lethal hits when I shot it.
Yeah, for those people who don't know, the Locust Destroyers, they get lethal hits, and if you've got a Lord with them, you get lethal hits on critical hits on 5s and 6s. So
yeah,
they can be pretty damn good. So you're down to you've got him down to 1 wound, Mark.
Yep, one wound. He breathed a sigh of relief. I breathed a sigh of relief. I was quite happy, you
No,
know.
you weren't.
Well, no, I did 8 wounds to the Incarn in from one unit. I was relatively happy, and then something chaotic or corn-like took over me from the previous game, and I said sod it, and I charged my Locust Destroyers at the Incarn to try and take...
Hang on. These guys have got 2 attacks each, and they've got a 3-up save. That's it.
Yeah.
That was. And the result was,
I killed it.
hey!
by, by sheer luck, but I did take the last wound off it, and at that point we'd both lost our scary big thing, and it was kind of game on again, you know.
Yeah. So what happened? What happened after that? What happened then? Because I don't know. Did you win this game? Did you lose this game?
No, we sort of took turns driving around the board, killing each other's stuff, and he won. I think it was 89-83, and it was pretty much the last roll of the game. I had my Destroyer Lord left alive on an objective, and I think I won by 1 point if he stayed alive, and he won by something like 6 points if he didn't.
Yeah.
And he even had a mild panic attack when he stood back up.
Yes, because you can pay a command point to do that, can't you?
Yeah, but then he killed him again on the last sort of stuff in the game. So he got a well-deserved win. It was an awesome game.
That sounds great. Just out of interest, I give my Locust Lord the blade rather than the Staff of Light. What do you put it? What do you give him?
Oh yeah, he's a choppy boy.
Okay. So it's not just me going mad. That's fine.
No, it means they can do something.
Yeah.
If they get stuck in combat, you know.
Yeah, and actually against the unit that is less than half strength, with their blade, I think they reroll all their hits and all their wounds.
Sounds about right.
It's they can be pretty tasty, but to be honest with you, if he's with a bunch of Locust Destroyers and he's using his blade, things have gone pretty wrong. To be honest.
Yeah.
Mark, right? So you're on 2-2. This is the game you want to win so that you can go 3-2 and go home happy. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, what were you fighting? Because it's clearly going to be an easy win for you. It's going to be something like, I don't know, Ultramarines, or I don't know, some poxy little chap that you can kill easily. What list was it?
Yeah, I got Death Watch again.
It's almost like we rehearsed this. So, how did this one go? So, Death Watch, you learnt a lot on the second game. Did that become handy this time?
Yeah. So I'll just describe the mission.
Yeah.
So it was a weird mission, and I didn't like it. It was the one where you took the middle objective away.
Oh yeah, that's horrible.
Which meant primary scoring was really low. For both of us, and my Lich Guard had nowhere to stand. So he didn't have a list that was as geared as Chris's list, and with all the respect in the world to my opponent, he probably wasn't the same level of player as Chris either, because very few people are. But he knew his list inside out, and it was beautifully painted. So it was an awesome... He deployed it, and I was like, well, this is just going to be great.
Yeah.
But Death Watch are still very, very strong into Necron, so whenever he pointed something at me, it mostly died.
Yeah.
The one difference, I guess, in the game was he never at any point tried to fully commit to killing the Lich Guard, which obviously Chris had figured out mathematically should kill them. So my Lich Guard, the one time he did shoot them, by the end of the game, my Lich Guard had marched all the way across the board and into his objective and finished the game on full unit strength.
Yeah.
but it was super close. The best thing for me, this was obviously because still, getting practice in at tournaments. I used a stratagem on the Tomb Blades for full rerolls to wound, and I got. I had a very high number of rolls into a large blaster unit. So I think I rolled something like 40 dice with rerolls to it. And I gave him like 13 mortal wounds or something, plus a load of saves.
Yeah.
And that made a big difference because the Terminators are very hard to kill for Necrons. Otherwise, 2 up saves and are very, very annoying. But he played well,
They're a good list. Deathwatch are powerful. So what was the end? What was the score there?
As 69-55 to me.
That's still close, Mark.
It was super close. Basically, I got a better run of secondaries than him.
Yeah.
Our primary scores were pretty similar because we both dropped 20 plus points on primary because of the mission.
Yeah, I know. All right. That's so at the end, overall verdict on the Leeds GT. Did you enjoy it?
Oh, I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Good. Will you go to more 10th edition tournaments, Mark?
Yep. I've got another one. Well, I've got another 4 booked in already this year. So.
Yeah. You do know that I'm at the LGT, so the chances of us getting drawn against each other are about 100%. You know that?
Yeah, definitely.
Every time I see you at an event now, Mark, you're always sitting on the top row of tables, and I'm somewhere down in the bottom sort of 25% percentile down there, and it just doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good at all.
I have my fingers crossed that it stays that way. But there's always round 1.
All right, listen. Let's move on to some thoughts. I've got a few thoughts that I'd like to ask you about. Firstly, you didn't take a reanimator. I haven't got a reanimator in my list either. Do you think it's something that you would consider in the future?
No. Honestly, no. It's one of those things. I think the whole Necron reanimation shenanigans with warriors and things like that is good, but it feels like a rough draft for the upcoming codex. I think they're figuring out what works and what doesn't. Yeah. I don't want to go through the effort of moving and reanimating 20 or 40 warriors every game. So
I'm with you.
I'm not going to play that. It is strong. It is good. The Lich Guard is fine for me. There's a lot of double Lich Guard lists knocking about, and if I was going to go down that line, I'd be more tempted by a reanimator. But not really. I think it's one of those units that will get you through early games, mid event games.
Yeah.
But any good player who understands roughly what your army does is just going to find a way to kill it.
Yep.
So to me, there isn't any point in taking it.
Yeah, that's exactly my view. That's why, even though I'm never going to be in the top 50% of games and I'm never going to fight those top players, I understand that, and I'm never taking a reanimator, which is a shame because, it seems sensible. Second question for you, Mark. Fixed versus tactical objectives. You went tactical every time. Were you not tempted by any of the armies you faced to go and decide, right, this is going to be, I don't know, bring it down, or it's going to be, and we can go fixed?
At this event, no. Because I was literally, the aim of this event was get the core basics down. I knew my list rules very well. I did not know the core rules and the little changes and those sort of pitfalls that you can land in where an addition has changed. For example, I haven't realised you can't put flying bases on a ruin if it overhangs now.
What?
So
what?
Yeah,
what?
A heavy destroyer can't sit on top of like an L-shaped ruin on the level because if its base overhangs.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So basically, you can't actually get the cover save by standing in the cover and shooting out through an upper story window.
Yeah, yeah, you can be on the ground floor, fine, but you can't normally, depending on the terrain piece, you
Yeah,
can't normally fit one of those big fat sort of what
yeah.
are they 60 mil bases. You
Interesting.
can't fit them on.
Didn't know that. Didn't know that at all. Okay, right. Last thing, Necron stratagems. I I hardly ever use any other than the one that allows me to instigate reanimation protocols in the middle of a shooting phase. There are other ones there that I look at and I think, oh, that's great. I should be using those. Did you tend to use any of the other stratagems than the what's it called, the protocol of the dying something, or did you use any more than one?
I used the reanimate one a lot in the early games because it was the one I remembered and I was relying on it as a crutch. I pretty much rarely used it outside of turn 1 and 2
Yeah.
for the other stuff. Uh, I said, a reroll to wound when you're within half range, or just reroll to wound if you have a character in the unit.
Yes.
That stratagem's great.
Does that work with that works really well with the locust destroyers then?
Yes, and I found it worked very well with a big unit of Tomb Blades as well.
Oh, I hadn't
Just
thought of using it
fishing
because
for mortals.
no, I would only think of using it if it had a character with them, and my Tomb Blades don't. But actually, if you get, hang on a minute, you'd have to be within 9 inches though, Mark.
Yeah, but that's okay. Like, they normally end up within 9 inches of somebody. And, if you do things like those strategic reserves, the turn you come on, you can't do it because you're going to be 9 inches away. But there are situations where you just go, I'm going to put my whole army into this unit because I'd very much like it to not be there anymore. And a big unit of Tomb Blades driving right next to them and dropping mortals is a great way to do it, especially like in my Death Watch game. Once my opponent had took wounds on Terminators, then chucking mortals in to finish them off was a nice way to do it,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And I can save my flat 2 damage like Death Mark shooting for the more standard Marines in the unit,
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
I knew I'd picked mostly the right stuff, but I knew it didn't all click together in the way that I wanted it to, now that I understood a bit more about how the mission was going to flow.
Yeah.
One of the things I struggled with was getting things like behind enemy lines and engage, which I'd imagine is a common problem for people. Because if you get that card at the wrong time, and the wrong time could be the very start of the battle, where your opponent has screened everything out, but it could be the end of the battle when you've got nothing left.
Yeah.
I struggled to pick those points up, and I found that annoying. So one of the variations I've gone down was to build a list that's going to do those things better.
Did you think about Ophidian destroyers that you can bring back any turn?
Strangely, Michael, I did.
Oh.
Yeah, I absolutely did think about Ophidian destroyers, and I can neither confirm nor deny that there are 3 units of 3 in 2 of the 3 variations of.
You're not going to give me. You're not going to give me any clues, are you? You're going to make me guess.
No, Ophidian destroyers are in.
Yeah.
Big unit of Locust destroyers is out, despite its Incarn killing abilities.
Oh, that's interesting because I've just put mine in.
Yeah, I don't think they're bad. I want to change the way my list plays.
Okay.
I think they're very, very good. I don't think they belong in a list with Lichguard.
Interesting.
But they are, and they always will be, a threat. And they're being dropped because they're the most obvious thing for me to drop. The other thing I'm dropping for this version of the list is I'm dropping my 2 6-man Tomb Blades units into 3 3-man.
Interesting.
Because I often found I was chucking a unit over to a faraway objective to score 5 points, and then it died.
Yeah.
Right. And I thought, well, I might as well do that with a 3-man unit.
Yeah.
Hexmark Destroyer did nothing. Nothing. The whole weekend. He's great on paper and terrible when you're surrounded by obscuring ruins and your opponent listened to you at the start of the game. He just wasn't any good.
Yeah, I worry about him. Like you, I've had those thoughts. So my Tomb Blades are in 1 unit of 6 and 2 units of 3. And one's for damage dealing and the other 2 are for doing actions and scoring points. Like you, I've got stuff at the backfield like Annihilation Barges, which I feel would benefit from getting a D3 extra wounds back. So instead of having the Hexmark, I've gone for the a second Technomancer with the Canoptic Cloak.
Yeah.
So he's basically jumping around healing the Locust Heavy Destroyers and the Annihilation Barges if they need it. So I kind of feel where you're coming from.
So the Annihilation Barges performed well in every game. The Mortal Wound stratagem didn't trigger as often as I would have liked.
Yeah.
But it's a nice amount of flat 2 damage to be just chucking out there.
Strength 8. It's wounding on 2s against Marines. It's good.
It's lovely. So I've dropped them both.
What you're killing me here. You know that, don't you? Because I've got them in my list.
Yeah, but I'm not saying I'm right. I'm telling you how my head works. I will go to another event now, a smaller event, and I'm going to run either one of 2 lists. And I'll tell you what they both are in a minute, but it's either a list that just contains everything for scoring cards and does very little in the way of killing.
Yeah.
Or it's a more fun list that will do worse. So the one that I think is good for missions are 3 5-man Deathmark units. They have free deep strike, and their shooting is not to be sniffed at, and their ability is a deterrent. What I realised in my games with the Deathmarks was the 10-man squads. One was okay. The second one I struggled to put it anywhere useful.
Yeah.
So at least one of the 10-man squads will always become 2 5s.
Yeah.
But this list is 3 5s. Then there are 3 Scarabs because they have free deep strike.
Hang on, Scarabs have deep strike.
I think so.
No, If they
don't, they're there for a different reason.
Yeah, I don't think they do, but they're useful bits of kit.
Yeah. 3 units of 3 Ophidians, who I think do have deep strike and weird tunneling stuff.
They don't hurt anything. They can't hurt anything. They hit like a bowl of spaghetti, but you're absolutely right. They're very good tech pieces.
3 units of 3 bikes.
Yep.
There's still a big Lich Guard squad, as previously described.
Yep.
But with an additional bit of tech in that I've given them the -1 to hit enhancement.
Yeah, the Obliterator or whatever it's called, the hypodermic...
Ablator.
Yeah.
-1 to hit, mathematically, is better than the 5 upfield no pain.
Yep.
So I thought, why not have both? And now my Technomancer has it.
Yeah.
I think there's a second Technomancer in the list, similar to what you've done. Still got 3 heavy destroyers. And still got the Transcendent Catan.
Yeah, sounds good.
Basically it. It's just, I will get to where I need to be to score points, but I'm not going to kill much of your stuff.
No.
But you still have to deal with this Catan and these Lich Guard.
Yeah. No, I've had exactly the same thoughts, Mark. My only issue with it, and there's nothing wrong with it, I think it will score points. But if I was fighting it, I'd be taking grind them down for just killing more than you're going to kill.
Well, that's fine. But for 3 turns, half of it probably isn't on the board.
No, that's true. That's true. But I still think I'd be able most armies would be able to wipe out a unit's left, right, and centre, wouldn't they?
What I found at the tournament is not a single player picked fixed objectives that I played.
No.
So, yes and no. If it becomes a threat, it becomes a threat. It's a nice way to deal with the list. The other list that I'm thinking about doing, which is a lot more fun, still has 3 units of 3 Ophidians, 3 units of 5 Deathmarks, 3 units of 3 bikes, but it also has a Technomancer. I think the Hex Mark's in because there was points left, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
It has a Transcendent Catan and all 3 named Catan.
I think they're good, you know.
I do. I think if I run 4 Catan and just lump them up the board while the rest of the stuff scores missions,
Yeah.
I just think it's funny.
Yeah, I think it's funny, and I think a lot of armies will struggle.
Yeah, I do. Even the half damage on all of them is very, very nice because it happens before mortals.
Yeah, it does. I have to say, I've done it and against Deathwatch, and Alex shot virtually his entire army at my Transcendent Catan, got it down to about 1 wound. So if you've got 4 of them, their target priority choice is going to be challenging, to say the least.
Yeah, and things like you have I can't remember the name of the stratagem where you just arrive in their movement phase.
Ingress, rapid ingress.
Yeah, you can do that. You can really annoy someone who's clearly made a plan to shoot your Void Dragon with his whole army and hopefully kill it. You can really cause a problem for somebody when you deep strike the Nightbringer 9 inches away from their stuff and out of line of sight of most of it.
Yeah,
you can really annoy someone.
And then in your turn, you move your 7 inches and charge 3 or whatever it is.
Yeah, and just murk things left and right, you know. And then he's forced to split fire. He's forced to readjust movement. Blah 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 blah. Hopefully, or it takes 2 Wraith Knights and I haven't got any stuff left. I don't know.
Yeah, no, look, I've got all of those. I've got all of those, and I would love to use them. And the Void Dragon is spectacular against vehicles, not because he kills millions of them, but because every time he kills one, he gets wounds back. So actually, he's almost impossible to kill as long as he keeps popping small vehicles.
Well, this is it, and I think, aside from competitive play for a minute, I really, really hope when we get our new codex, I really hope we get a new Catan model for either the Deceiver or the Nightbringer.
Yeah, I do.
So to sort of match that Void Dragon, because it just feels it's technically worse playing with a big model than a little model, but I just want them to look cool, you know.
He's a star god. You know, he is the dying remnants of a core of a solar entity. He can't just be a little squidgy bloke, can he? That's not right.
That's it. I don't want to. And also, for the love of God, please build new Locust Destroyers.
I couldn't agree more. I've got too many of them, and I'd then have to invest in more. But yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
I'm all right with that investment. I will buy them all again.
Do you want to know what's in my list?
Yeah.
It's very similar to yours. I've got a Hexmark. I've got a bunch of Lich Guard, the 10 Lich Guard with the standard Cryptothors, the Transcendent Catan, and the Overlord with his Resurrection Orb. I've got 6 Tomb Blades, 2 3s of Tomb Blades, a 10 of Death Marks, 2 Annihilation Barges, another Cryptek, not Transcendent, what's he called? The Technomancer. This one with the this one's got the +1 to hit aura, the coronal thing, and he bounces around at the back with the 2 Annihilation Barges and 3 heavy Locust Destroyers, and I think that's about it.
I have a feeling you'll do very well.
Well, we shall see. Every time I fight Alex's Deathwatch, his Desolators kill everything on the backfield, and his other guys bounce around in front of me. But now, I would like to put in 3 units of 3 Scarabs, because pushing the Deep Strike away from me with Deathwatch would mean that their frag cannons are a lot less scary, and and I'd like to use them, but I'm going to have to use the bikes, the Tomb Blades, to do exactly that job, and that's a bit expensive.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's going to depend what you're aiming for. The reason I'm changing my list is I don't think I'll go 5-0 with my similar list. I think 3-2 and 4-1 are very, very achievable.
Yeah.
But something will beat them. I think we have a problem. It's not like it may or may not be a problem, but the situation that we have at the minute with Index Hammer in particular is that there are some rock, paper, scissors elements. So on paper, Deathwatch probably have a sub 50 or 50-ish% win rate.
Yeah, that's bollocks though, if you don't mind me saying.
And it's like, yeah, okay, cool, right? But there are reasons for that. Are there top level players playing them? Probably not always, right? They're an easy army to have, to obtain, because of relatively small model count, and they're Space Marine models, which everyone has got knocking about.
Yeah.
But also, it feels like they are really, really strong into the Xenos races, which on one side of things they should be, fluff-wise. From a competitive point of view, I'd be very interested to see the data in their matches versus Xenos compared to their matches versus something else.
Yeah. But perhaps that's a good thing. Perhaps when you've got Gene Stealer Cults and Eldari and everything, all those guys doing really well, perhaps you need something like that can go toe-to-toe with those guys and punch them in the face.
If they're going toe-to-toe, but if they're not actually going toe-to-toe, if Gene Stealer Cult and Eldari are beating Deathwatch most of the time, which seems to be what's happening because they have their 65-70% win rates, then that's what's keeping the Deathwatch numbers low.
Yeah.
You know, compared to the other stuff. Necrons feel like they're in a good place, though, in general. It's a fun index to play, but I think it does reek a little bit of the Codex is coming out soon, so it's not had 100% of attention paid to it.
I think you're right, and I think that's a good place for us to start drawing it to a close, Mark. I'm so pleased you went 3-2. If I went 3-2 at a tournament, I would be happy as Larry. And I'm hoping that the list I've got is going to do it. But I'm now thinking about Ophidians, which is really annoying me because I've got some and I don't want to use them if I can help it because they die in a heap.
Maybe just one Annihilation Barge, swap it out for one unit of the 3 Ophidians, and just you got a bit of everything then, and you can see how you get on.
Right, now you're coaching me. Right, on that happy note, Mark, thank you so much for your time, mate. It's great. I'm looking forward to seeing you again soon. I'm at the LGT. You're going to be at London?
Yep, definitely.
Fantastic. In that case, thank you very much for your time, mate, and I will see you then.
Yeah, thank you, mate.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, dear Lord. I'm going to have to change my list. Thanks, Mark. As always, fabulous. It's always good to hear you talk about what you've been doing. You're one of the best players I know, and I think you would be doing a lot better if it wasn't for the fact you just keep fiddling around with your list to try and do something a little bit different. And I respect you for that. Great stuff. Thank you. Keep it up. Okay, so I'm going to have to change my list. I am fiddling already. I'm thinking. My head is swirling. And now I think I'm going to go MSU all the way. Lots of small units in my Necron list. I reckon I can get up to about 20 or so, of which 3 or 4 will be tough to kill. But anyway, I've got time now before the Goonhammer Open, and then that's a bit of practice for the LGT in London. Either which way, I'm going to have fun with the Necrons now. Please do share this if you like it. If you like this content, please share it. Tell your friends. Tell everybody about it. Tell them to... You can't subscribe at the moment. I'm looking at YouTube. I'm looking at a way to get my podcast onto YouTube. Hopefully that will boost the numbers. So if you've got anything to say, anybody wants to have a go, have a chat with me, you've got a burning issue you want to discuss about 40k, give me a call. Let me know. Until then, see you on the ice.